Hey everyone, it's Frankie with MeekSpace, back with a tutorial for mDomestics. Today we're going to help you with part 2 of setting up a congregation database. So if you haven't already, you need to go watch mDomestics Set Up Congregation Database Part 1. That'll help you get started clearing out the training database and setting up your own local database for your congregation on your iPad. If you're the administrator, this is what you want to do, is watch that first video and get started setting up your congregation on your iPad. Once you get it to the point where you want to share and get help from others, then this is where this part 2 comes into play. So let's open up the app, mDomestics. Now, as the administrator, you're going to have this option on the top, in the bottom right, called Allow Reconnect Without Clearing Database. That's an indication that you were the one that subscribed and paid for the year's subscription to the replication service. And you'll have that option. If you don't have that option and you were the one that subscribed and paid, you'll need to go to the settings icon and make sure under personal preferences that you have a check mark under administrator mode. Now, if you're not the administrator, you shouldn't have this option, and that's okay. So only one person in the congregation is the administrator, and we'll be doing this part of this video. So as the administrator, make sure there's a check in there under personal preferences in settings. Then you'll go back to account, and you'll make sure that you have that option, allow reconnect without clearing database. The first thing you'll do is make a backup. So click on last local backup and hit the run button. That makes a backup of your database the way it is right now. So in case something happens, you can always revert back to that. So we'll exit out of here, and now we'll put a check mark under allow reconnect without clearing database. You'll get a warning that it's going to put some files and things up on Dropbox. Hit OK. Now, before we move further here, I want to open up Dropbox and show you that right now in Dropbox I only have a couple of files. If I hit files at the bottom, you can see I only have 2 files. I don't have any folders. We're going to go back to our mDomestics app, and so we put a check mark under allow reconnect without clearing data. We've made a backup, and this is your database that you want to put up online. Make sure this is the one you want there. And let me rephrase that. We're not actually putting the database online. What we're actually doing is creating the file structure for the replicator. Because what happens is when you make changes, it takes those changes from your database locally. It sends the changes to Dropbox, and then sends those changes to somebody else's database on their iPad. And so you're just sharing the changes with each other. You're not actually sharing the database. The database stays local on each person's iPad. Okay, so we have the checkbox checked. We have a backup. Now we're going to go to the Cloud Replication Disconnected button in the top right. And click that, and we're going to connect. Now it should open up Dropbox, and sometimes you'll get this error. I'm not sure why, but just hit retry. Now it's going to ask you, do you want to allow mDomestics to connect to your Dropbox? Make sure that's the right Dropbox account there, and if it is, go ahead and allow that. Now what's happening is mDomestics is creating the file structure for the replicator. It's not actually putting your database up there, it's just creating the file structure so that you can then share that with other people. And so that's what's happening right now. That icon in the top left corner turns blue. That's basically indicating it's synchronizing and creating those folder structures. So we're going to go back to Dropbox. And if we click the Files button again, typically it takes a little bit for this to refresh for you to see any changes. So I typically go to Home, and then I go back to Files. Now you notice I have a mdomestics.v folder. And if we open that, we should see 5 folders in there. If we do, well, that's a good indication things are working the way they're supposed to. So we're going to now go back to mDomestics, And you notice we're still synchronizing information and still creating that file structure and stuff. And so now where we're at right now in this process is you've successfully created the sharing structure on your Dropbox to be able to share with other people. And so the next part of this would be giving access to other people. And so what they'll do is they'll, on their iPad, they'll make sure they have Dropbox installed and logged in. They'll have to install the free Dropbox, or if they have a Dropbox account, make sure it's installed and they're logged in on their iPad. Make sure that they have mDomestics, and if you go to the home page, make sure that they have the same version of mDomestics as you do. And if they do, then what they'll do is they'll go into the account section, and theirs will look different because right now I'm connected. So what I'll do is disconnect so that you can see what theirs looks like. So they're going to look like this, except for they're not an administrator, so they won't have that allow reconnect without clearing data at the bottom. They'll just have this look here. And so they'll send you a text, an email, or ask you verbally to share the mDomestics folder with you from your Dropbox. When they do that, you'll go to your Dropbox on your iPad as the administrator. And if you're not inside the mDomestics.v2 folder, perhaps you're here at the Files section or at the Home section. If you go to Files and then go into the mDomestics v2 folder, there's a Share button. So click the Share button, and in the Send To, you're going to put in the person requesting access. You're going to put their Dropbox email address. So this has to be the email address that's associated with their Dropbox that's on their iPad. So you'll put that email address in and you'll hit Share. They'll get a notification in their Dropbox and they'll accept that notification. And then they'll go back to mDomestics and they'll clear their local database. And so they'll hit the Clear Local Database. When they do that, if they've been working on their own database, it'll make a backup of that. So they'll just hit Clear Local Database and hit the word clear, and it'll clear everything. Now when that happens, they no longer have a database, which means that they're now locked out of all the other sections. If you notice the dots next to all the sections here on the left, they're locked out of there because they don't have a database. How do we know that? Well, because we see the dots, but also if we go back to the home page, notice it says database empty. So their iPad has no database, and they're locked out until they can get that database. Well, they want to connect to your mDomestics folder so they can get a stream of your database. So they'll go back to accounts. They've requested the share. You've invited them. They've accepted through their Dropbox. Now they've cleared their local database. Now they're going to hit the disconnected button under cloud replication, and they're going to hit connect. Now it's going to come up. If it gives them this error, just hit retry, and they're going to allow a connection to your shared mDomestics folder on Dropbox. Now what happens is their iPad should start getting the blue cloud in the top left, and they're going to start using the replication folder that's on your Dropbox, and you're replicating your database up through that replication service on Dropbox and back to their iPad so that they will have the same database as you have. And so at this point, you just have to wait until those dots disappear. And so this is, the member you've invited. This is their iPad. They're sitting here waiting. They've gone through this process. And so they'll just wait until the all clear is done by watching these dots when they disappear. Now you, as the administrator, you can continue to invite people by going back to Dropbox and hitting the share button, and you can put somebody's address in here and you can share with them. Now you can also hit that little gear in the top right corner, and it's going to show you a list of everyone that you're sharing to in this list. Now I'm not sharing with anyone, so there's nobody here, but as you share with people, it'll show everybody's name in here listed that you're sharing with. It'll also show how many people you're sharing with total. So we're going to go back to mDomestics and see if that finished. So we're still trying to synchronize between the two. And there we are. So it typically only takes a couple of minutes. Now how we know we're synchronized is we'll close out of this and we'll go into publishers, and we should see 178 in my case, because in my database I have 178 publishers. And I always look at groups to see that I have the right amount of groups, and over here I have 8 groups, which is the right amount. And so it looks like everything's fine. And so now this iPad is synchronized with the database that I originally set up. And so you'll just continue to add people as you go and get them connected to your congregation database. And really, friends, that's all it takes to get somebody connected. And that's the second part of the mDomestics Set Up a Congregation Database Part 2. And so we will have other videos that explain other processes in the future. So continue looking back for new tutorials. Thanks for taking your time.